Drama Triangle psychologically is a game people play. This video is going to be titled Signs of a Toxic Job, and I'll be showing how the drama triangle shows up in the workplace to make the work site a toxic place to work. Now, this is a series of videos I've been producing. The first one was on emotional immaturity that fuels the drama triangle. So verbiage is something that can, once one person gets it in an organization, it's very easy to catch on like cancer and go through the entire organization. And the whole purpose of the drama triangle is not to have anything change. Well, the verbiage in emotional immaturity purpose is not to be accountable for one's actions, and how one can do that is staying in the cycle of the victimization, entitle, rescue, and blame. And the outcomes, your attitude is bad, your growth is non-existent. And if you see at the bottom, I had said in that video, anybody that is in the verbiage cycle, they tend to have over and over again either blaming others for uh, um, what they did or didn't do, and when they talk about themselves, they give one excuse after the other for not, again, being accountable for their actions. So you can see in the middle of that triangle, the false self is what is being perpetuated in the drama triangle. And what I mean by the false self, it is an outbreak of the neurotic ego, and it's imperative to look good at all times. From the previous video on called The Players, on who plays the drama triangle, I stated in that video fear is a major motivator of those people, and what goes in hand with fear, as well as not being accountable for one's actions, is deceit, no trust or little trust. And again, the neurotic ego is running the show here, so that's a big part. And staying in denial of your own, especially of your part in the situation, is imperative in the drama triangle. Now, jobs on the job site, is quite normal to have expectations, but at the same time, how expectation plays out in a toxic work environment, usually expectations tend to be a little bit more bloated, and also the players themselves, some of them can have high expectations of themselves. Well, David Richo, which I will refer to later on in this video, says expectations is like a coin. When you don't get what you want, the flip side is resentments, which leads to anger. And anger is a major motivator in the drama triangle. So the whole purpose of doing these videos is to explain how I ended up playing the drama triangle more than once in toxic work environments. You'll see the little clouds of less, less, less. Well, the more work you do, the less productive you are. Also, because I was coming from a place where I felt less than because I had low self-esteem, I was doing more work. Also, I didn't have good boundaries, where I did not know at the time where I ended and others started. So out of the less boundaries and having poor boundaries, I was doing others' work and really into people pleasing. And also, the less I was, the more I was doing and playing out that victim role, the less communication I was given about, on how to effectively do my job, which I will get into further on down the line. So once you're in the victim role for a long period of time, you become invisible. And what I mean by invisible, you're not heard really, your opinion doesn't matter. Um, Everybody is in a situation where there's very, very little none trust of coworkers, and deceit and denial go hand in hand. And for me, what made matters worse is I very childishly thought for a very long time that there should be a fair system. Well, I'll go into details, but later. But everything about the drama triangle uh, is not fair, and I'll explain more about that later. So I went into motivations why people stay in the drama triangle more in the other videos, but I will just touch up on the major motivators um, in a work situation. Now, the authority figures that are the exploiters, like I said, fear tends to be the modus of operandi for everyone in the drama triangle. So the subtle to blatant threats, if you're in an organization and it, the subtleness turns to become more and more blatant. And what I mean by blatant, it feels like your arm is being cranked behind your back and you're thrown up against the wall and more or less told that you will do certain things or there's the door, is the subtle hint. Um, there are industries, unfortunately, that do this chronically. And a good telltale sign is if you ever seen a business it has a big sign out front under new management and then now hiring. There's a lot of industries that only thing they do is change the company's name for the sheer purpose of firing anybody that's been there longer because the longer you stay, the more expensive you get for the company and your pay goes up. And that's one of the ways that some industries, quote unquote, solve that problem. Down below, I told you about the double standards. It's been my experience that anytime someone is in a position of authority is hired on and then fires a bunch of people and then hires their friends, um, that's a good telltale sign that disaster is about ready to happen. And the drama triangle, if it wasn't uh, present, it will be, and the verbiage will will definitely be affecting all the employees before long. Also, another version of the double standard here, where some people, again, what I'm talking about is some people get away with murder and do the bare minimum. I have found on jobs where employees get to, uh, get other relatives hired on in the same company. It's been my experience one person works really, really hard to cover the asses of the 2 or 3 or God knows how many other relatives that's on staff that do absolutely nothing. And then, and I will finish it, part and parcel of the authority figures is entitlement, and they have that know-it-all attitude. And right above that is the selective listening skills. There is spokes in the wheel that are totally powerless, like I list at the number one, and feel invisible because they definitely are not listened to. And you see the spokes of the wheel. Um, there's a lot of fears. The training programs in these companies, due to the high turnover rate, usually is not very good. So you're supposed to know things without being told. Um, and the communications can be very vicious, and people withholding information to let people, and I'm talking about communication that people need to know to be able to do their job effectively. The viciousness withholds that type of information. So anytime information is withheld, that the stronger the gossip in those organizations, and you more or less have to wing it and try to get the strains of truth out of the gossip to be able to effectively do your job. And to cover your ass is doing a job well enough that you're not the one that gets blamed if anything goes wrong. Here I've got the setup, but here's two parts of the drama triangle. Um, the one is the perpetrator, which is usually the boss who plays the perpetrator. And the blue dot means that usually the boss is insulated by staff and gatekeepers. And sometimes in the drama triangle, the boss is told only what he wants to hear versus what's actually happening. And that's the reason for that little blue dot for the insulation. Some people in a drama triangle come in as the rescuer and stays in the rescuer from then on. Okay? And what I mean by the setup is to set a victim up, which is another part of the later on I'll explain. Usually they do a lot of compliment bombing, and and they portray it as a rescuer role in the beginning. So someone with that usually ends up in the victim role has a low self-esteem. Compliment bombing, you know, is the big pats on the back, which feeds is a really big hook to get the victims into their roles, and that's what I mean by the setup. Okay, once you come in looking like a rescuer, and you slowly go down into the victim role, and how that happens is there are maintenance things that everybody should be doing, and usually if the victim takes on those duties, uh, and or takes on duties of others, again, the reason why I mean by expectations are higher. Once you start doing things like that, it's expected that you will do them indefinitely. So that's what I'm referring to by expectations being higher. Um, they not only expect you to do those jobs, those maintenance jobs and other people's jobs, but your job as well. Um, so again, the longer you're on the job, you're wondering where the love now is, and the more you did of the maintenance jobs and other people's jobs, the more you're going to get disrespected and invalidated and not being listened to. And definitely, the outbreak of all of those is you feel invisible and powerless on the job site. So this is how it played out with me being the victim. I was definitely feeling sorry for myself. You see the line leading from the victim role up to the perpetrator role is broken. Reason for that is the perpetrator, the exploitee, is not listened to by the exploiter, the perpetrator, and as a result, there's a line of that line is broken. So, how it played out for me on a number of jobs, I would get hopping mad. Again, I was people pleasing and I took over other people's jobs due to bad boundaries. And also, I was doing maintenance work, and it was again expected that I would do this forever. And the longer I did it, the expectations turned into resentments, and I ended up hopping mad. And again, I the cover your ass all the time is very, very physically demanding, and especially when you're doing more than your work, and you're in a chronic state of physical exhaustion. And I definitely was in the verbiage cycle of venting to anyone who listened and blaming others and being mad about the unfairness of the situation. And chronically, whoever stays in this victim role for the longer you stay in a toxic job, it affects everybody. It's, but the more you work you do in a toxic job and physically exhausted that you're running on adrenals, um, the more likely there is going to be physical ailments that show up in your body to make the situation even more worse than what it is. So when the victim gets really hoppy mad, one of the outbreaks and can be the hidden perpetrator. I can only speak for myself going full throttle. Um, I ended up with having brain farts, and the brain farts led to mistakes, so you hide your mistakes, and that leads into the lying and deceit down below. But also, a hidden part of the hidden perpetrator is you have covert retaliation, which means you might lose critical data at critical times or misuse company resources. Um, there's a lot of turnover in toxic job situations. This economy, everybody needs their job. That doesn't matter. There's still jobs out there with high turnover rates. And over to the side, the three reasons why it's predominantly consistent on the high turnover is because of the double standards. There are some treated much better than others due to the setups, and the setups is situations where someone is set up to be blamed for someone else's mistakes. And I'll go into further how the setups are used by management. And of course, I touched upon communication usually is through the gossip ring in a drama triangle, and people are not given the communication they need to do their job. So what happens when the victim runs up and jumps that chasm and becomes the perpetrator and has a confrontation? Well, my personal experience, when I was hopping mad, I would become the perpetrator, and everyone flees was the result. The sole purpose of the drama triangle is not to be accountable for one's actions. So having someone yell at you that saying you didn't do this, you didn't do that, no one cares. No one wants to listen to the person that's invisible on the job. So that filtered down, and I was the one that was looked like the bad guy, and I ended up the one risking my position by trying to get everybody to see their part and be accountable, which was insanity. And 9 times out of 10, the result would be written up or put on probation, or I was fired from jobs. Another way a victim can become the perpetrator and again start yelling and screaming, um, is they're set up by management. There are some jobs, um, it's just business. You know, you go through a series of pay increases, and then once you get to the top pay increase, it's not uncommon for some toxic work situations to create some fictional setup situation that is considered they consider worth firing you for, and they set this up in such a way that they can blame you for something, and then they use that excuse to fire you. And another reason that a setup by management could happen is if someone develops some health disease that would risk the bottom line for the management in health benefits. And so there are some people that have newly diagnosed, maybe have a cancer of some sort, that are set up and fired. And finally, in the drama triangle, the whoever's in charge really, really wants to keep that position. So anybody that is innovative or creative that comes in, that's talent, that has a lot of raw talent, usually 9 times out of 10, management feels threatened by those individuals. So as soon as they get good at one job, they're thrown into another job or given uh, more and more duties, um, to kind of squash that raw talent. Another thing that I have found personally, the person that comes in with that has the raw talent and also has the competence and confidence in themselves, they're the first ones to leave. So this is the drama triangle. Again, the exploiter or the perpetrator is bubble wrap, being told what they want to hear versus what actually is going on. There are some who's playing the part of the rescuer and stays in the rescuer role. And then there are others who slide down the victim role with that broken line between the exploiter and the victim due to the communication breach, of not being listened to. So everybody wants to get out of the drama triangle and get out permanently. Well, you see this triangle is called the true self, and how to move towards your more authentic self. Well, I can only tell you that the only way I was able to be successful in removing myself from the drama triangle is I left the job. And unfortunately, there are industries whose modus of operandi is the emotional immaturity, the verbiage that runs like rampant cancer through a system. And the drama triangle is modus operandi for those industries. So if you happen to be in one of those industries, you know, either retraining yourself or becoming self-employed in something totally different is your choices. An integral part of caring choices is do the research. Before leaving a toxic job, taking 6 to 8 months and going out and looking at who's advertising what jobs. And if you keep seeing the same positions being advertised over and over again, yes, that may be an indication that the company is growing. If it is, there would be proof of that in the news. If it isn't, that's proof that there could be high turnover in that company. So instead of just going out and blindly throwing out your resume to anyone or anything that's out there, part of the caring choices is making discerning choices of where you put your energy. part of being assertive is a combination of the differentiated self is learning how to be your own autonomous self, and the assertiveness that how that ties in is, I can only speak for myself. I had to stop doing that game of thinking that I was less than and feeling unworthy, and that I had to do other people's work to fit in. So part of the inside work and being a differentiated self is learning self-esteem. Also, a part of being assertive is having flexible, adaptable boundaries and knowing where you end and where another person's responsibilities begin. Learning how to say no is part of that assertiveness. Part of self-responsibility means when there is a mistake that it happens, I personally take the time to go back and look at the situation as unemotionally as possible by taking apart the situation piece by piece, so I fully learn what my part in the situation was. So part of self-responsibility is holding my own feet to the fire. And once you learn from a mistake, I can say that it probably will happen again, but once you've made yourself aware of how you've gotten yourself into a mistake, when the situation arises again, you know the telltale signs. And then you are back to making more caring choices and asking yourself, do you want to go down the same road again? Or do you want to make a different choice this time? So I am hoping I'm impressing upon you that this isn't something you can take a pill and you're going to get better tomorrow. This is a lifelong journey, and it's inside work. And part of the true self is cultivating good and healthy habits. And the good and healthy habits I have cultivated is I do exercise not because I have to, it's because I want to, because it's part of my self-care. I pay attention to what goes into my body. I eat at certain times so I'm not totally starving. I take time for prayer and meditation, journaling, doing gratitude lists. Also, I'm taking time, uh, you know, in learning how to be the loving parent to all the inner kids that didn't get the love and the nurturing back in childhood. And I had to trace it all these toxic job situations and toxic people, I traced all the way back to my childhood. So I had to go all the way back, learn everybody's part in my immediate family, learn how to forgive my caretakers, learn how to forgive every toxic person that came into my life, and realizing that they are spiritual guides that taught me that, hey, I had homework to do to permanently get myself out of the situation, and be grateful for those people in my life, and also learn the full scope of what being a differentiated self is. So I'm still learning. And I will tell you, if you start incorporating assertiveness and self-responsibility in a toxic job, you're going to get a lot of flack, because the drama triangle hinges on no one changing. But what you can do is quietly stop feeling sorry for yourself. So for additional information, If you want to explore more information about the drama triangle, the book Stop Caretaking the Borderline or Narcissist is the best book I've found that explains that. Also, this is the book that talks about the assertiveness, caring choices, and self-responsibility. The next book, David Richo, is where the expectation coin and the flip side being resentment. How to be an adult in a relationship is the book. I believe he talks about this. He has several books that I've read. The next book is for anyone who is feeling invisible and needs to move out of that fear. I list this book, The Courage Habit, to give you, to create better habits that are healthy and give you the courage to get out of the drama triangle, a toxic job. And finally, I list 2 movies that kind of show different various parts of the drama triangle. In What Women Want, and if you go back, it's been a while since I've seen this movie, but there was one part that struck me about a female actress that is running around doing, and it looked very much like other people's work, and she was contemplating on suicide and wondering if anybody would notice if she was dead or not. That is definitely shows the telltale signs of someone that's in the victim role that's feeling invisible. In The Intern, Robert De Niro plays the victim role in several ways. In one of them, he cleans up a mess on a table, and this is a mess that everybody, this is what I'm talking about, a maintenance issue. If everybody did the maintenance of putting things away, it would make the system run better. Well, no one's doing their part. He cleans it one time. I can only say I used to do that too, but once you clean it one time, it's expected you will clean it all the time, like in a toxic job situation. Also, he waits on Anne Hathaway and spends exorbitant amount of time on the job. Catering to Anne Hathaway is definitely a sign of people pleasing, which is a telltale sign he is in the victim role. Anne Hathaway plays a part where she is on the customer service line and there was a problem with some dresses for a person's wedding and they came in the wrong color and she gives a personal promise and then she's pulled away. Well, whoever catches that ball and made that happen is a rescuer. And Anne Hathaway, in that movie, her spouse ends up having an affair. The drama triangle at home, one of the outbreaks can be extramarital affairs. So this movie shows not only how the drama triangle shows up in this job site, but how it can be carried, and that toxicity can be carried into the home and how it plays out in the home. The only part in this movie that wasn't part of the drama triangle, there was one scene where Anne Hathaway apologizes to Robert De Niro. Apologies are not a part of the drama triangle. That would assume that people are taking responsibility for their action. And believe me, the drama triangle, the whole purpose of having that on the work site is so no one changes and no one is accountable for their actions. For feedback or comments, I list this email here. Type it as one long word, all lowercase without the parentheses. And if you're watching this and you definitely have been playing the victim role, I do wish you the best of luck, and I do hope that you have the courage and honesty to face your own pain and see the drama triangle in this work situation in the future as training you to be a better person than what you are today.